I just don't understand why you'd buy such a tiny house, Emma, my sister-in-law, said with her trademark condescending smile. How do you even breathe in here? She stood in my cozy living room, making a show of fanning herself as if the walls were closing in. I'm Sarah Mitchell, and at 34, I thought I finally created the perfect home for my family. Our 1,200 square foot house might not be a mansion, but with its charming character and a large backyard that had so much potential, it was everything we dreamed of. My husband Tom and I had spent months finding the perfect place within our budget, somewhere our two kids could grow up with a yard to play in. But according to Emma, we might as well have moved into a cardboard box. Actually, we love the size, I replied, keeping my voice steady. It's perfect for us and the backyard. Oh, honey, she interrupted, waving her manicured hand dismissively. You can't seriously expect us to have family gatherings here. There's barely room to turn around. She peered through our kitchen window at our backyard, which admittedly needed work. And that space out there looks like a jungle. I felt Tom tense beside me. His sister had always been like this, ever since we got married 5 years ago. Everything we did was somehow wrong, too small, too simple for her sophisticated tastes. Her own 4,000 square foot house in the expensive part of town was her favorite topic of conversation. We're hosting Thanksgiving this year, Emma announced, scrolling through her phone. Mom agreed it makes more sense at my house. You understand, right? We need space for everyone to be comfortable. By everyone, she meant our small family of 8. Tom's parents, Emma and her husband, and the 4 of us. Our house could easily fit them all, but Emma had decided otherwise. That evening, after she left, I stood in our backyard looking at the overgrown space. It was big, almost a 1/4 acre, currently just wild grass and a few scattered trees. We'd been planning to do something with it, but between moving in and settling the kids into their new schools, we hadn't had the time. Don't let her get to you, Tom said, joining me outside. Emma's always been a snob. I finished, managing a small smile. He laughed, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. I was going to say particular, but yeah. I leaned into him, my mind starting to work. The backyard really did have potential. A lot of potential. You know what? Maybe Emma's right. Sarah? No, hear me out. This space is too big for just us. But what if? I walked further into the yard, ideas beginning to take shape. What if we did something bigger? Something for the whole neighborhood? The next day, I noticed Mrs. Torres, our elderly neighbor, tending to her small container garden on her apartment balcony. She lived alone and grew the most beautiful tomatoes I'd ever seen. Then there was the young couple across the street, always talking about wanting to grow their own vegetables but lacking the space in their rental. I started researching, learning about community gardens, urban farming, and sustainable living. The more I read, the more excited I became. Our backyard could become something special, not just for us, but for everyone around us. When I shared my idea with Tom, his eyes lit up. You want to turn our backyard into a community garden? Why not? We have the space. The neighborhood doesn't have anything like it. And imagine teaching the kids about growing their own food. We spent the next week planning. I drew up designs, marking spaces for individual plots, common areas, and even a small playground for the kids. Tom, who worked in construction, helped me figure out the logistics of irrigation and soil requirements. The first person I approached was Mrs. Torres. Her face brightened immediately. A community garden? Oh, Corita, that would be wonderful. My balcony is so small, and I miss having real earth under my fingers. Word spread quickly. The young couple across the street, Mike and Lisa, offered to help with the initial clearing. Other neighbors started showing interest, offering tools, expertise, and enthusiasm. One Saturday morning, as we began clearing the yard, Emma drove by. She slowed down, watching the small crowd of neighbors working together, confusion clear on her face. Later that evening, she called Tom. "What is Sarah doing to your yard?" she demanded. "It looks like she's destroying it. Mom is worried sick about your property values." Tom put the call on speaker so I could hear. "Actually, we're creating a community garden. The whole neighborhood's involved." "A what? Oh my God, you can't be serious. First a tiny house, and now you're turning your yard into some kind of public vegetable patch? What will people think?" I took the phone from Tom. They'll think we're building something beautiful for our community, Emma. You're welcome to join us. Join you? Playing in the dirt with strangers? I don't think so. She hung up, and I could almost hear her eyes rolling. But we kept working. Every weekend, more neighbors joined in. Mr. Lee, a retired landscaper, helped us design proper drainage. The local hardware store, hearing about our project, offered us a discount on supplies. Even our kids got involved, excited about having their own small plot to tend. As spring approached, our backyard transformed. Raised beds took shape, paths were laid, and the first seeds were planted. We installed benches, created a charming entrance arch, and set up a community bulletin board. What had once been an overgrown mess was becoming something magical. Emma drove by occasionally, each time with a more pinched expression on her face. But we were too busy to care. Our tiny house had become the heart of something bigger than ourselves, and watching it grow brought more joy than any large, empty mansion ever could. Little did we know, our garden was about to bloom into something even more extraordinary than we'd imagined, and Emma's carefully maintained facade was about to crack in the most unexpected way. By early summer, our community garden had transformed into something beyond my wildest dreams. The once empty backyard now burst with life. Tomatoes climbing trellises, peppers starting to fruit, and herbs filling the air with their fragrance. But it wasn't just the plants that were thriving. It was the connections growing between neighbors. Every evening, the garden hummed with activity. Mrs. Torres taught the neighborhood kids how to tell when tomatoes were perfectly ripe. Mike and Lisa started a composting workshop. Even our shy neighbor, Mr. Peterson, who rarely left his house, began spending evenings tending to his plot of heirloom carrots. Then came the day that changed everything. I was helping our daughter, Katie, water her strawberry patch when a sleek black SUV pulled up. Emma stepped out, wearing what looked like designer gardening clothes, complete with spotless rubber boots that had clearly never touched soil. "Sarah," she called out, picking her way carefully along the stone path. "Mom wanted me to check on you. She's worried you've lost your mind with this project." Before I could respond, Katie ran up to her aunt. "Aunt Emma, want to see my strawberries? I grew them myself." Emma took a step back, as if gardening might be contagious. "That's nice, sweetheart. But you could just buy strawberries at Whole Foods. Much cleaner." Katie's face fell, and I felt that familiar surge of protective anger. But before I could say anything, Mrs. Torres appeared beside us, a basket of fresh vegetables in her arms. "Would you like some real tomatoes, dear?" she asked Emma. "Not those plastic things from the store. These have actual flavor." Emma looked startled. She wasn't used to anyone challenging her views. Well, try one," Mrs. Torres insisted, holding out a perfectly ripe tomato. "Taste what food is supposed to be like." Maybe it was the authority in Mrs. Torres's voice, or maybe it was the audience of gardeners who had stopped to watch, but Emma actually took the tomato. She bit into it, and I saw the exact moment her carefully maintained expression cracked. "This is amazing," she admitted, looking surprised at her own words. "That's what real food tastes like," Mrs. Torres said with a satisfied nod. "Sarah's garden here has given us all a chance to remember that." "Our garden," I corrected gently. "It belongs to everyone." Emma looked around, really taking in the scene for the first time. Children playing between the raised beds, elderly neighbors chatting on benches, young couples working together on their plots. It was everything her pristine, empty mansion wasn't: warm, alive, and full of community. "Would you like a plot?" I offered, surprising myself. "We have a few spaces left." "I don't know anything about gardening," Emma admitted, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "None of us did when we started," Mr. Peterson spoke up from his carrot patch. "That's the beauty of it. We learn together." Something shifted in Emma's expression. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked almost humble. "Could I really?" "Of course," I said. "Everyone's welcome here." That evening, as the sun set over the garden, Emma stayed to help Katie water her strawberries. She had dirt on her designer clothes and a smudge on her cheek, but she didn't seem to care. I overheard her asking Mrs. Torres about tomato growing tips, genuine interest in her voice. The next morning, Emma arrived early, wearing more practical clothes and carrying garden tools she'd bought. "I've been doing research," she announced. "Did you know there are over 10,000 varieties of tomatoes?" Over the next few weeks, a different Emma emerged. The woman who had once mocked our tiny house now spent hours in our backyard, learning from neighbors she would have previously ignored. Her perfect manicure gave way to soil-stained hands, and her condescending smile transformed into genuine laughter. But the real surprise came when she called a family meeting at her house. "I've been thinking," she said, looking nervously around her massive, pristine living room. "This space, it's too big for just us. What if we did something like Sarah's garden? Not exactly the same, but maybe a community space." Tom and I exchanged shocked glances. This was not the Emma we knew. "My backyard is twice the size of yours," she continued, her old competitive spirit flickering briefly. "We can do classes, workshops, maybe even a farmer's market." I smiled, recognizing the same excitement I felt when first planting our garden. "That sounds wonderful, Emma." She beamed, and in that moment I realized our little community garden had grown something even more precious than vegetables. It had grown understanding between sisters-in-law who had once seemed worlds apart. But summer was drawing to a close, and with it would come our biggest challenge yet. The city council had taken notice of our growing community space, and not everyone was happy about it. We were about to learn that sometimes the sweetest victories come from the most unexpected places. The notice from the city council arrived on a crisp September morning. "Unauthorized community gathering space, zoning violations, cease and desist." My hands trembled as I read the official letter. Someone had complained about our garden. The increased foot traffic, the informal farmers market we'd started on Saturday mornings, the children's laughter, apparently, it all violated residential zoning laws. "They can't do this," Emma declared, standing in our kitchen. She had driven over immediately after I called her, still wearing her gardening apron. "This garden is the best thing that's happened to our neighborhood." Looking at her now, passionately defending the very project she'd once mocked, I felt a surge of gratitude. "We have 2 weeks to appeal," I said, "but we'll need community support." Emma's eyes lit up. "Leave it to me." Over the next few days, I watched in amazement as my sister-in-law channeled all her former social networking skills into saving our garden. The woman who once used her connections to exclude us now used them to help us. She contacted local news stations, got signatures from neighbors, even convinced her friend on the Historical Society board to declare our garden a vital example of modern community building in a historical context. But the most surprising moment came during the city council meeting. The room was packed. Our entire garden community had shown up. Mrs. Torres with her famous tomatoes, Mr. Peterson clutching photos of his prize carrots, dozens of children wearing Save Our Garden t-shirts that Emma had ordered. "This isn't just about vegetables," Emma stated, standing confidently before the council. "I was wrong about this garden at first. I thought small meant insignificant, but what my sister-in-law Sarah created isn't small at all. It's enormous in all the ways that matter." She gestured to the crowd behind us. "Look at these faces. Before this garden, we were strangers living next door to each other. Now we're a community. Children learn where food comes from. Seniors have a place to share their knowledge. Families grow together." The council members looked surprised. Clearly, they'd expected complaints about property values, not impassioned speeches about community values. Then Katie, my daughter, raised her hand. "Can I say something?" The council chairman nodded, smiling. "My strawberries died last month," she said simply. "But Mrs. Torres helped me plant new ones, and Mr. Peterson gave me some carrot seeds, and Aunt Emma taught me about composting. That's what our garden is, everyone helping everyone else grow." The room fell silent. Even the council members looked moved. When the vote came, it was unanimous. Not only could our garden stay, but the council also created a new community green space designation to protect similar projects in the future. They even offered grants for expanding such initiatives. Emma hugged me tight as cheers erupted around us. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For showing me that the size of a house doesn't matter. It's what grows inside and outside that counts." That evening, we hosted a celebration in the garden. String lights twinkled overhead as neighbors shared dishes made with our homegrown produce. Emma proudly served her first successful crop of cherry tomatoes. "You know," she said, watching the community she'd once looked down on laughing and celebrating together, "I'm thinking of downsizing." I nearly choked on my lemonade. "Really?" She nodded. "That big house, it feels empty now." I want something more like yours, something that feels like home. 1 year later, our community garden has 3 locations: our original backyard, Emma's transformed lawn, and a new plot donated by the city. The Saturday farmers market is now a town highlight, and our gardening workshop program has a waiting list. Emma bought a charming house just down the street with a perfect-sized yard for her own gardening adventures. She hosts weekly composting classes and has become the garden's most enthusiastic volunteer coordinator. Yesterday, I overheard her telling a new neighbor, "Size doesn't matter. It's what you make of the space you have." My sister-in-law taught me that. Looking around at what grew from one tiny backyard, the friendships, the community, the literal fruits of our labor, I smile. Sometimes the smallest spaces hold the biggest possibilities. All you need is the courage to plant the first seed.